I hit it with a bunch of foil in my ear. I call to order the January 21st regular meeting of Whittier City Council at 7:11 p.m. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we begin tonight's meeting, please note that digital copies of the packet are available on our website. A QR code is provided just outside the door or in the top left corner of your YouTube video. Open your phone's camera to scan the code and access the packet. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Shen.
Here.
Mr. Wagner.
Here.
Mr. McCalto.
Here.
Mr. Pinkush.
Here.
Mr. Denmark. Absent. Mr. Dickinson.
Here.
Mr. Mayor.
Here.
Mr. Mayor, you did have a request for an excused absence from Mr. Denmark.
Okay. Is there a motion and a second to excuse Peter Denmark from tonight's meeting?
I'll make the motion. I'll second.
Any discussion? Hearing none?
Voting on the motion to excuse Mr. Denmark from tonight's meeting, Mr. Dickinson.
Yes.
Mr. Shen.
Yes.
Mr. Wagner.
Yes.
Mr. McCalto.
Yes.
Mr. Pinkush.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
The motion is passed and Mr. Denmark is excused for tonight's meeting.
Citizen comments on any agenda item except those scheduled for public hearing are welcome at this time. Those who have signed in will be given first opportunity to speak. Please note, this is not a time for dialogue. It is a time for you to speak and the council to listen. Madam Clerk, is there anyone signed in to citizens' comments? Before we bring people forward, there's usually some discussion on the limit of time for each citizen. Was that 5 minutes or 3 minutes or what?
According to the code, the time is limited to 2 minutes per speaker and 30 minutes total time for this agenda item. If the number of speakers is more than the 30 minutes given, the mayor may allow any remaining persons the opportunity to speak during agenda item 12, citizen discussion.
Sorry about that.
Ms. Karen Dempster is first. Ms. Dempster?
Karen, it's
Podium
up
is
here.
there.
I am short, even though I brought a book, which is my backup information. I'm here because the new city tax, in our opinion and our attorney's opinion, does not apply to BTI, the tax on our parking lots, our bicycles, and our dogs. And here's why. Number one, apartment owners have an undivided interest in the land that is reserved for parking. In a sense, they are parking on their own property. You can't tax somebody for owning something and using that ownership right. They are not paying the city of Whittier or some third-party parking lot owner a rental fee. That would be taxable. Our declarations filed with the state of Alaska, number 1, number 3F, and 4AG are on file. And it's very clear that it's a common ownership. The people in that building own those parking lots as a part of a common property. All fees are collected for the maintenance and enhancement of the parking lot. It's not a profit situation. The income for these fees is recorded in our published budgets, item number 4805 as income, and then the expenses for maintaining the parking lot is in the budget as 6120. So we record the income and we record the expense. It's being used for the upgrade of the parking, sanding, gravel, fees in the summer, painting the stripes, in the winter, snow removal. BTI pays property tax to the city already on that property, which includes the tax on the parking lots in the building. Each homeowner also pays property tax to the city. Okay, the same is true for fees charged for bicycles and dogs. The bicycle owner owns the bicycle. The dog owner owns the dog. The bicycles are already owned by the person seeking the fee tag, and the money is used to purchase bicycle racks, dog poop bags, poop barrel emptying, etc. So it's a fee for enhancement of the use of the facility, and we are charging the person using the facility. And then they are paying for the upgrade and keep. There's not any big money income. And the other thing is my objection to year-round residents paying fees after the tourists go home and we roll up the sidewalks in about October. Because we live here, we want to go to a restaurant, we want to support our local businesses, we have to pay the city to do that. If the local owners aren't here in the winter, most of them, and they're still paying as if they were running the business in the summer. So I think that's a little problem, and I would like you all, please, to look at this carefully, because somehow this has gotten way out of bounds. And then I will come back when you talk about number 16. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen.
Next on the list is Mr. Greg Allison.
Good evening, Council. My name is Greg Allison. I'm one of the co-owners of Good Cannabis up in Fairbanks, Alaska. And I just wanted to come down from Fairbanks tonight just to say thank you for considering to extend the deadline for our conditional protest. We hope to be excellent stewards of business and community members down here. It's still something that is very important for us to try to achieve, as long as the council and the community is open to that. And we know that there's a lot of steps still to move forward to make it happen, but we appreciate your consideration. I'll be here all evening, and so if there's any time at the end that you all have that can give us some advice on how we can better assist the community or be involved in the community at this juncture, I really appreciate it. And again, I really appreciate your time and your consideration this evening. Thank you.
There is no one else signed in.
Is there anybody in the audience that wishes to speak? Seeing none. I'd ask for a motion and a second to approve tonight's consent agenda.
I'll make the motion. We need to make some adjustments.
Put it on the table.
Oh, okay. Second.
Okay, I'd like to remove the, what would it be? The December minutes
Remove them from consent agenda.
from the consent agenda. Where was that?
It's number 1 on
Okay.
C1.
So yeah, the December 17th regular meeting minutes, I'd like to remove that from the consent agenda. And then I'd ask council to consider letting me move items under C, other new business, items 4, 9, and 10 to underneath or in between items 14 and 15. Any discussion? Hearing none. David, did you have something?
No.
Hearing no further discussion?
Voting on the approval of the agenda and consent agenda as amended. Mr. Dickinson,
Yes.
Mr. Pinkush,
Yes.
Mr. Shen,
Yes.
Mr. Wagner,
Yes.
Mr. Mercolto,
Yes.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
The motion is passed and the agenda and consent agenda as amended are approved.
Okay. Moving on to conflict of interest. At this time, does anyone wish to declare a substantial financial interest in a matter appearing on the agenda? Looks like we have no presentations or reports. I have a mayor's report tonight. Tonight, I am speaking out on behalf of our community about the unfortunate event which occurred on September 5th, 2024. On this day, there were 10 unmarked state trooper vehicles and at least 20 personnel with at least one police dog. The Alaska State Troopers have so far been uncooperative in disclosing their reason for arriving with such a large force of armed officers. Some of our residents were questioned about the location of Brenda Tolman's barn, which the troopers expressed a desire to surround and apprehend illegal immigrants. I do know they also knocked on my door asking for the whereabouts of my neighbor, Brenda. The state troopers also located every resident in Whittier who is an American Samoa resident or American Samoa, from American Samoa. They interrupted where they worked and lived. The purpose is unclear. The appearance of such behavior seemed to imply intentional intimidation tactics. The details of Brenda Tolman's barn indicates a local resident of Whittier contacted the Alaska State Troopers and told multiple blatant lies. Our community respects the rule of law, and in turn, we expect to be allowed to live in peace and enjoy all the benefits stated in the United States Declaration of Independence. All people in the United States are entitled to the pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness. American Samoa is a sovereign territory of the USA. I ask all residents of Whittier to unite as one against the blatant attack on our community. The attack was motivated by hate. There can be no tolerance for vicious attacks on any member of our community. The ACLU and other freedom-loving organizations have banded together to assist us in our time of need. Transparency demands that the perpetrator or perpetrators be named and brought to justice. Peter's absent tonight.
Mr. Mayor,
Chris, you're, go ahead.
I apologize. I skipped a step and I forgot to read the items that were approved on the consent agenda immediately after you approved the consent agenda. May I do that now? Approved on tonight's consent agenda are Resolution 2025-002 supporting full funding, $5,740,408 for the State of Alaska Municipal Harbor Facility Grant Program in the FY 2026 State Capital Budget, And Resolution 2025-003, supporting raising the maximum available Alaska Department of Transportation Harbor Facility Grant to $7,500,000 for eligible projects on an annual basis. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Chris, do you have would you like to give us your report?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll try to make it quick. City Manager Jackie Wild is finishing up a much-deserved vacation, so was not able to be here tonight, so I'm sitting in for her. Some of the highlights from the City Manager's report, which begins on page 4 of the packet. There's an interesting thing from the City Clerk, basically a social media report that shows how social media has reached out to more folks in the last few years as that has expanded. So kudos to our city clerk for getting more public involvement in that process. And there's also the annual report on council attendance at meetings. The finance report provides an update on the new grants that we've received since the last month. We were awarded $325,000 from the DEC Village Safe Water Program for sludge removal, testing, and disposal related to our 301H waiver for wastewater. We were awarded a $1.8 million grant from the DOT Federal Highway Administration for the next phase of Shotgun Cove Road. We were awarded a grant for $3,598 from the Alaska Police Standards Council for police recertification. And also the $75,000 grant for a new backup generator for the city's sewer system. So those are great additions to our ability to enhance infrastructure and get some of our police officers recertified. The ambulance billing is up and running, doing really well. We generated over $9,000 in ambulance receipts in November and December. Some of that is related to the backlog, obviously, of prior service that was provided and then billed by our new third-party billing vendor. So kudos to them. That's working really well. Also, the city's moving forward with enhancing our cybersecurity, utilizing 2 grants that will be coming before council this evening. We're expecting to issue our harbor revenue bonds at the end of March for the Phase 3 project. We'll see a resolution related to that project and that bond issuance later on the agenda. And then at next month's meeting, we'll be coming forward with a resolution requesting approximately $60,000 appropriation to replace the electric meters in the harbor in our existing section of the harbor. Council may recall last year we had an issue where we discussed in depth in a work session the condition of our electric meters and in the harbor, and that they had all reached or exceeded the end of their useful lives, with some meters no longer functioning. So we'll be coming forward with a request to authorize an appropriation to add that onto the Harbor Phase 3 project so we can gain some economies of scale when we put those new meters in for that project. So that'll be next month. The harbor office will be closed between January 25th and February 20th on the weekends due to staff shortage, and we'll reopen on the weekends after February 20. And then I've asked if Jason from Fire and EMS can give you a brief update. They got some really exciting things going on in their department, and I think it's worth celebrating.
Thank you, Chris. Mayor and Council, just a quick update on the fire department. We currently have ETT class going. We've got 12 individuals in that class, 4 of which are youth, so that's really positive for the community. As Chris said, we have the medical billing is up and running. I think the last piece of that is the VA piece of that, but Medicare, Medicaid, everything's good there. And the fire department is also working with the State of Alaska Health Department to get a health fair here in the city, probably late next month or early March. So we'll bring in resources here for the folks and just have a good time with the community with any health related items. That's it.
That's all that I have to report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Jason. And thanks for the grub, too. Okay. Moving on to new business, ordinance 2025-001, an ordinance of the Whittier City Council amending sections 12.32.050, 12.32.060, and 12.32.140 to clarify reporting procedures and timelines for businesses registered under Chapter 12.32 and subject to the commercial recreational waterborne passenger fee. I'd ask for a motion to, let's see, is this for, to introduce, so, and a timeline for when the second hearing would happen.
Move to introduce ordinance 2025-001 and schedule for public hearing at the next
February
regular-
18th.
at the next regular meeting, February 18th.
I'll second.
Discussion?
Do we need a staff
Dave?
report?
Oh,
I can give a brief staff report. The purpose of this, it's very simple, I think. We received great feedback from the business community after implementing the ordinance. The primary question was whether folks could please be allowed to report quarterly instead of monthly on their waterborne passenger fee. So that's the request here, is to allow everybody to start off as quarterly filers. And then in the event that they miss their filings or they're not timely paying, then we would basically follow the same process that we do in the other tax codes, which is then we would require them for some period of time to become monthly filers until they were remitting more regularly according to the ordinance. So this just allows folks to go to quarterly filing instead of monthly. And then it also, in the original ordinance, it required that passenger companies provide manifests. So the data that would talk about, who specifically was on the vessel as a way of vouching for the number of customers. And we're asking to forego that requirement. That's really onerous for especially the larger operators that have so many boats and so many customers. And instead, just stating that they would be required to present that information if they were audited in order to verify the number of passengers. But otherwise, they won't be required to file that information with us. So for the public's sake, these are the two things being asked for in that ordinance.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank administration for listening to the business concerns, because it was, it was adding, to me, unnecessary workload. And for the record, boats that carry 6 or less passengers don't normally have manifests, so it would have created extra work for them to have it. But there are other ways for vessels to have documentation of who they had on board. If they're fishing charters, there's a record, complete record of it. So it would be very easy for them to come back and produce that information another way. Thank you.
Mr. Dickinson, did you have a hearing no further discussion?
Voting on the motion to introduce ordinance 2025-001, amending sections 12.32.050, 12.32.060, and 12.32.140 to clarify reporting procedures and timelines for businesses registered under Chapter 12.32 and subject to the commercial recreational waterborne passenger fee, and set for public hearing at the February 18th, 2025 regular meeting. Mr. Pinkush.
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson.
Yes.
Mr. McAlto.
Yes.
Mr. Wagner.
Yes.
Mr. Shen.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
The motion passes and ordinance 2025-001 is set for public hearing at the February 18th regular meeting.
I'd ask for a motion for resolution 2025-001.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Discussion? Is there a staff report?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is for Resolution 2025-001. We're asking the council simply to ratify the authorization you've given before for the issuance of the harbor bonds. Because it was in excess of a year ago when we originally brought this forward to council, and it's taken some time to get us to the point of being able to do the actual financing. We're asking council to just ratify, just verify again for the bond bank that because of the timing delay, that we're still interested in pursuing the revenue bonds. And then the second thing this does, under section 1, you'll see under definitions in section 1 and in section 3, because usually when you issue bonds, you name the bonds based on the year in which they're issued so that they'll be consistent between the city and the state bond bank. And so because we initially were planning to issue the bonds in 2024, all the definitions in our bond agreement reference a 2024 date. We're simply asking for that to be changed to 2025 so that it's consistent. So we're basically, we're just asking to amend the verbiage for the previous resolution to change the dates from 2024 to 2025. And that's the essence of this request. Thank you.
Hearing no further discussion,
Voting on the motion to approve Resolution 2025-001, ratifying its authorization to issue a series of harbor revenue bonds in the principal amount of not to exceed $4,500,000 for the purpose of financing the design, construction, and acquisition of harbor and related capital improvement. Mr. Dickinson,
Yes.
Mr. Pinkush,
Yes.
Mr. McCulto,
Yes.
Mr. Wagner, and I muted you, so you're going to have to unmute before you. I've unmuted you. Mr. Wagner. Mr. Wagner. I'll come back. Mr. Shen.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor.
yes.
Mr. Wagner, can you hear me? We can't hear you, so I apologize if me muting you messed you up. But if you can speak later, please let us know and we can come back to this one. But as it sits, the motion is approved. The motion passes and Resolution 2025-001 is approved. You can hear.
I'd ask for a motion to Resolution 2025-004.
Move to adopt resolution 2025-004.
Second.
We have a staff report.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The city has been granted 2 cybersecurity grants that total $107,307. The first one is for the purpose of purchasing and installing multi-factor authentication, and that will help us to reduce or increase, I guess, security protections of the city's computer network. And then the second grant we received is for $98,432. That will help the city to develop a cybersecurity plan, also replace aging network equipment that we would otherwise have to pay for ourselves, and allow us to switch out some gear that is obsolete and doesn't have the same cybersecurity protections as the current technology. So this is just a request to accept those 2 grants and allow us to proceed with implementing the cybersecurity plan and equipment replacement. Thank you.
Hearing no further discussion,
Voting on the motion to approve Resolution 2025-004, accepting 2 grants under the state and local cybersecurity grant program in a total amount of $107,307 for the purpose of multi-factor authentication, cybersecurity planning, and network equipment replacement, and authorizing the city manager to implement the projects and appropriating funds. Sorry, hold on. Mr. Dickinson, Mr. Pinkish,
Yes.
Mr. McAlto,
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson,
Yes.
Mr. Shen,
Yes.
Mr. Wagner.
Yes.
Excellent. We can hear you now. And Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
The motion passes and Resolution 2025-004 is approved.
Okay, moving on to other new business. Approval, ask for a motion for approval of December 17th, 2024 regular meeting minutes.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Okay, I would ask the, first and foremost, I really appreciate the clerk with these minutes. In this particular case, I'm going to be asking for an amendment, and please take my long-windedness and also make it abbreviated. But essentially, during the capital improvement plan, we had a staff report by Chris, and in that report, we were talking about the amendment we made to the capital improvement to move forward the priorities of residential and employee housing. And Chris stated, that in truth, that administration was doing their best to guess the needs of the community. That's the key, is the guess, and it's not meant as a derogatory. It's to point out that without a comprehensive plan, not only is administration trying to guess the needs and wants and will of our community, but also the council is in large part having to guess. We've had way too much changes. We've had over 70 acres of land. Anyway, sorry. They just amend that, the word guess, and then I'll be happy. If you can just paraphrase that long-windedness into something meaningful, I'd be appreciated.
Mr. Mayor, just for clarification, so amend the minutes to add the administration was doing their best to guess. What did you say?
The needs of, or the priority of, residential housing and employee housing. That's it.
Mr. Mayor, can I just elaborate for Shelby?
Sure.
So one of the things we talked about was we typically, when we're trying to decide on the timeline in the next 10 years, where to put a project, we will typically put a project that we know funding is likely to be available sooner rather than later. We'll move that up further or closer in time to today. And then where we don't really know that there is funding available, or it'll take a lot of time to get funding, we'll usually push those projects out. So I think it's fair to characterize what I was saying is where council has their own idea of a particular timeline in mind, that they don't want to wait 5 years, they want to come up with a solution sooner than that we can move those projects anywhere on the timeline council desires. So it's really more a matter of understanding council and the community's priorities for the timing of moving those projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
So the motion to amend reads, amend to add, the administration was doing their best to guess the priority and needs of employee and residential housing to the staff report for Resolution 2024-041.
That's good.
Okay. I'm assuming you're making the motion, so you're still seeking a second?
I'll second it.
Yes, ma'am. Yep. I'll make that motion.
Did you want to have discussion, open for discussion?
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none.
Voting on the motion to amend the regular minutes of the December 17th, 2024 meeting to add, the administration was doing their best to guess the priority and needs of employee and residential housing to the staff report for Resolution 2024-041. Mr. Pinkush,
Yes.
Mr. McAlto,
Yes.
Mr. Wagner,
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson,
Yes.
Mr. Shen,
No.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
The vote is 5-1. The motion passes, and the motion to amend passes. Returning now to approval of the December 17th, 2024 regular meeting minutes as amended.
Do I have a,
You have a motion and a second.
okay,
Now it's just any further discussion before we vote.
no
Okay.
further discussion.
Okay. Voting on the motion to approve the December 17th, 2024 regular meeting minutes as amended. Mr. Dickinson,
Yes.
Mr. McAlto,
Yes.
Mr. Wagner,
Yes.
Mr. Pinkush,
Yes.
Mr. Shen,
No.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
The vote is 5-1. The motion passes, and the December 17th, 2024 regular meeting minutes as amended are approved.
Okay, I'd ask for a motion to, for the next item, marijuana license request to extend deadline of conditional protest.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Can we get a staff report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have the attorney that's been working on this available to give the report on, if you'll just hold on just one moment.
Good evening. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, yes, we
Yes.
can hear you.
Oh, great. Thank you. Yes, thank you for inviting me to give this report tonight. There is a memo with a lot of exhibits and information because this is detailing a pretty complicated and unusual situation. And just to give you a quick reminder on the facts, as you certainly remember, Good Cannabis, who made a representative from Good Cannabis who made a presentation earlier this evening, also represented the company and gave several presentations last fall. They're very interested in opening a licensed marijuana retail store in the city of Whittier. And the issue that we ran into was that the Good Cannabis submitted an application to the state agency that regulates marijuana. And when the city received notice that the application had been submitted, we had an opportunity to file a protest. And the city reviewed the application, and we realized that there's an issue with the potential lease of what is essentially a city-owned property that would be subleased to the marijuana business. And the issue that we ran into was that both the master lease, which that property is subject to, and the city code prohibit the use of city property for a purpose that is not permitted under federal law. And marijuana, though it is, the commercial marijuana industry is legal in the state of Alaska under state law, it is still prohibited under federal law. So we advised the city that that there should be a protest filed because as the city code is currently written and as the master lease is written, city council could not could not approve that marijuana license and had not yet been presented with the opportunity to approve a change in the existing lease agreement or a sublease to the marijuana business. So, and even if the city council had been given that opportunity, due to the language in the code and the master lease, that would not be permitted. So we filed the protest with AMCO, the Alcohol and Marijuana Control Office. And then in discussions with between the city and Good Cannabis and their attorney, who I believe is also present online for the meeting this evening, between us, we realized that what we were really talking about was a conditional protest, because the protest could potentially be lifted if certain conditions were met, or more accurately, if the legal playing field changed. So at the time, there was marijuana has been the discussions about rescheduling or potentially descheduling marijuana at the federal level to make it more accessible or to remove some of the restrictions have been ongoing. Last fall, when this was being discussed, it seemed highly likely that marijuana would be moved from federal Schedule 1 to Schedule 3, which would potentially make it easier for the city to permit that activity. So because there could be changes in the law or potentially amendments to the code, potentially amendments to the master lease, what we realized was that this was really a conditional protest, that if these conditions could be met, that then the application could proceed to the council for review. We had to put some time limit on it, and what was discussed with Good Cannabis and the Alcohol and Marijuana Control Office was the end of January 2025, so that deadline is coming up. Good Cannabis has asked for some guidance over the last few months to figure out how they can move forward, because as you can imagine from everything I'm describing, potential changes to the city code, a potential amendment to the master lease, obviously a lot of moving pieces there, a very complicated process, something that would take a lot of time and organizing, and essentially the amount of time that the city provided under the conditional protest was not sufficient, and Good Cannabis is now asking to have that time period extended. And that is the question that is in front of you tonight, whether to extend the conditional protest period to allow them more time to try to make all of this happen, which would also entail doing additional legal analysis on some other questions that are present. It would require ultimately the city considering a change of use to the lease and a potential sublease. So there's still a lot of things that would need to fall into place for this to happen. And I guess that's really all I can. This is probably a good point for me to just pause for a moment and see if there's any questions or any points or issues that the council would like additional clarification on.
How long you, I guess what's the time frame on this deadline extension that you're proposing?
So so Good Cannabis has asked for a 1-year extension to January 31st, 2026. That's probably, if you have questions about the particulars of that or about how they would plan to proceed, those are questions that I think would probably be best directed to their attorney, who is on the line as well, and could be available to answer questions about whether that is a reasonable time period, an appropriate time period, or if something shorter or longer would be more appropriate.
So among other things that have to happen, would the federal government reducing the classification of marijuana or eliminating it, would that be the first requirement for it before we even bother with any other consideration? I mean, without that, is it not going to happen?
Well, if I'm understanding the question, I think the first thing I would say that is if the federal government descheduled marijuana, meaning removed it from the schedules under the Controlled Substances Act and no longer made it a regulated substance, then it would be then we would not have any issue with federal illegality, right? Then it would be a substance that is not regulated by the federal government and would be legal. If it was changed to a different schedule or a lower schedule from Schedule 1, then there would still be restrictions in place that would have to be complied with in terms of federal law. The main reason this is coming before the council is because of this unique situation where the city council is essentially, or the city is wearing two different hats. You're the local governing body that is tasked with approving these types of applications in your communities, but you're also the landlord. And that's a pretty unique situation. I'm not aware of that. A municipally owned property being leased or used for a commercial marijuana business anywhere else in the state. There might be places elsewhere in the country where that's happening. I'm not aware of that. That's something that Good Cannabis's attorney may have more information on. But essentially, there would need to be. I would say to begin, I don't think that a change in federal law would make a complete change in federal law where marijuana was no longer illegal under the Controlled Substances Act would make the problem go away. But as long as it remains a scheduled controlled substance, then we do have to make sure that the use of city property is compliant with federal law. And that's because of the current language in the code and the master lease. But then even if that language was amended, there could be other concerns that come up. There could be questions about, access to federal grants or programs or things like that could be affected. There are also questions about whether, the fact that the city is actually leasing the property from the railroad, that could avoid some of those issues as well. But these are questions that have not been answered yet because they require, they're essentially unprecedented questions and unusual questions. We have not gone through the process of fully analyzing and identifying all of these issues and discussing them because we haven't really been presented with those questions yet, right? The first thing that the first way that this came to the city was through the notification that a marijuana license application had been filed. So the first thing we had to do was to put on the governing body, the local government hat, and look at the protest and protect the city's right and need to protest, because as a matter of law, the use of the property under these circumstances violated the city code. So we had to file the protest. The next thing to do then would be to, if you extend the protest period, that would give Good more time to try to meet those initial legal requirements, like dealing with the questions about the city code, potential amendments there, amendments to the master lease. And then there's also the city then has the opportunity to put on its landlord hat and answer the questions about whether the city would approve this lease, approve this sublease, approve this particular use. And there are provisions in the city code that guide you in terms of what uses you would approve when you grant a lease or grant a sublease. So I know that was kind of a very long-winded and windy answer to your question. So I hope that I answered it, but if not, I'd be happy to follow up.
And council, this is Holly. I just want to dovetail into what Jason is saying. One thing I would say as your city attorney is if you come to me and you're asking about the leasing city property or an interest in city property for a use that is illegal under federal law, I'm going to advise you not to do that. So I mean, just add that to and that is not what Jason is saying here with the protest. It's one, I think he did a great job kind of pointing out the hat you wear, but I want you to be very aware of that. And, so that you understand when that analysis happens, I think your questions are exactly right. We are talking about illegal activity at this point, but we may not be talking about illegal activity at a later point, which is one of the reasons why, Jason's taken the approach that he's taken.
So if that became fee simple land, or there became other fee simple land available, other than it would boil down to no longer a landlord issue, but it'd still be a city code issue right now?
No, I'll let Jason answer that. Sorry, Jason.
No, that's okay. So if you're saying if there's a piece of land that is not city property, that is just privately owned and is outside of the master lease or outside of any city property? Is that
Yeah,
the-
let's assume that land was acquired and we sold it and it became fee simple. Would that person then have the ability to open a weed shop without the city? Would it still violate the city code or the codes that are affecting it because we're leaseholders of the land, or we own the land?
Well, if you no longer own the land, right? If a private party owns the land within the city, there's nothing in the city code that prohibits. You don't have a chapter on marijuana regulation or requiring licenses or zoning or things like that for marijuana businesses. So if someone is operating on a piece of private land, then the city is still the local government and still would have the ability to protest, but your protest, the reasons why you might protest then would be very different than the reasons why you filed the protest now. The reason we filed the protest now is because of the gap between federal law and state law and the city, right? So the municipal code says use of city property and anything we lease has to comply with, it can't be inconsistent with federal law. If someone owns a piece of private property, then that condition would not apply. Then the city would be able to review it, and they would still have the right to protest, but your protest essentially, it can't be what the regulators refer to as arbitrary and capricious, right? It would have to be based on a reasoned, legitimate reason why you would be protesting. So what we're dealing with now is, this current situation based on the law and the disconnect between federal law, state law, and how the city is kind of falling in between those two things. Also, if I could just, let me make a quick follow-up on that. If that was the case, if there was a new piece of property, like for example, if a different piece of property was sold to a private party, then we would also be looking at a new license application because it would be at a different location. So this process would essentially, we would be starting this process over because it would be at a different location.
Okay, we have any further discussion? Victor?
Just a question for a city attorney. I just kind of clarify Holly, what is your recommendation for the council? What would you recommend us?
I mean, I think council, you can go either direction here, right? And you're extending the time, and given the uncertainty surrounding the federal law, for me, I mean, I can understand why council would want to give them an extension of time for that reason, because a few months ago, I thought it was almost a certainty. And that was when the administration was considering the conditional protest and Jason was advising them. It really was in this realm where we were looking at the potential descheduling or rescheduling. So I think council can go either way. I think that you can extend it, or you could, Jason, I guess my one question would be if they maintain a protest, but there's a change in the law based on the language of the protest letter, the original protest letter. I mean, is there room there for Good Cannabis to come back to council?
So Holly, if just to clarify what you're saying, if there's a change in federal law that reschedules marijuana or changes the federal status, would that essentially satisfy some of the conditions in the protest?
Or would that just allow, is there any room there? So the city would file a protest under an application that was under different laws, or a mechanism for the city simply to draft a letter at that time saying, we protested this on the state, it was a conditional protest, it expired, the law changed on X date, the city has, Good Cannabis renewed their application, and we do not have a protest based on that change in law.
So if the city does not lift the protest, essentially this application would, Good Cannabis's current application will terminate. It will essentially just, it'll evaporate with the regulatory agency. So if there's a later change in the law, then Good Cannabis would have to start the process over again and, respend whatever resources and time and money it has spent on the initial application. If the protest is essentially extended, if the protest period is extended for just using the 1 year that the applicant has asked for. If it's extended for a year, the city can lift the protest as soon as the conditions in the protest are satisfied. So if there was a change in federal law, again, hypothetically speaking, let's say that that marijuana was removed from the Controlled Substances Act and the federal restrictions were taken away, then basically most of the conditions in the protest would be met. You would not have a conflict with the master lease if marijuana was legal under federal law. The city still would have the responsibility, and Good would have to go through the process of applying for, or the current occupant of the property would have to ask for a change of use for the property, and would also have to get approval for the sublease. So the council would still have the opportunity to consider the activity that would go on and happen at that location. So it wouldn't guarantee that this, if you extend the protest period and there's a change in federal law, it's not a matter of like, oh, snap your fingers and all of a sudden Good Cannabis just gets to open its shop. They will still have to come to the council and go through the process of getting approval for their sublease and the change of use and all of that. But a change in federal law would remove a lot of the, would lead to them being able to meet a lot of the conditions in the protest. So that's again a very long, I'm kind of long-winded tonight, but to just kind of summarize the issue I think that Holly was trying to present, there really isn't a way for the city to allow the protest period to end and then later on go back to the state regulatory agency and say, we actually we're okay with it now, we want to lift our protest. That application is it's done, it's dead. So they would have to start their whole process over again at that point.
So I think in light of that, what I'd advise is if you extend the conditional protest or the period to meet the conditions, I would amend those conditions to add a condition that the proposed use complies with federal, state, and local law. So obviously one condition would be to change local law. You would have the condition regarding the railroad, but that would make it clear that there's a requirement that it comply with federal law. And that will take away some of the back and forth. And I think the reason why that wasn't done initially is because there was this change in federal law anticipated, on the horizon. And I think that, one of the things Jason was looking at is how do we make sure you're acting with just one of your hats, right? Let's keep these things compartmentalized. But honestly, in light of everything that you've been presented, I think just adding that condition and extending the date would protect the city's interest, but also provide additional time so they don't have to start the application over if that change really does come in the next year.
Thanks for that. Okay, is there any further discussion? I'm not clear. Holly, Do you, as counsel, legal counsel, are you recommending extending this or not extending this?
So this is one you guys can do, whatever, you can go either way and there's no wrong answer. If you're asking me, I would say a motion to extend the conditional protest with the addition of the following condition. The proposed use shall comply with federal law. Applicable federal law, that's what I would say.
And local law.
You add
also.
that to the letter, and then you can send a letter saying we're extending the conditional use, clarifying that, among those conditions is that it complies with federal law.
Federal and state law.
Federal and state law, you can say that too, yes. And I think the initial conditions that were proposed do comply with state law. You know what I mean? So that was the goal, make it comply with local and state law. And I think there was a presumption that federal law would change, or that we'd address the federal law under the sort of lease, the landlord application approval hat. But I think given the givens and that we're at this stage, I think it's best just to get it in there so that everybody's on the same page. Just make it clear.
Shelby?
The attorney for the applicant is also on Restream. And if you would like to hear from that attorney, then I would just ask that you consider relaxing the rules and then inviting her to speak, if you'd like to hear from the attorney on the applicant's side.
I personally have heard about 20 minutes more than I wanted to. If there's members of the council that want to hear from them, that's fine. What I would do is put it before council. Shelby, did you write down the amendment that Holly?
Yes, I did.
So if the council would like to make a motion based on it?
Yeah, I'll make that motion to extend the protest period for 1 year and meet the condition of meeting, add the condition that they meet the both federal and state law.
I'll second that.
Okay, so the motion reads to approve a conditional protest extension to January 31st, 2026 with the added condition of shall comply with federal and state law.
Correct.
Any further discussion? Hearing none.
Voting on the motion to approve the conditional protest extension to January 31st, 2026 with the added condition of shall comply with federal and state law. Mr. Dickinson.
Yes.
Mr. Pincush.
Yes.
Mr. Wagner.
Yes.
Mr. McCulto.
Yes.
Mr. Shen.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
The motion passes.
Did we just do an amendment to this, or what?
Nope, sorry, I didn't take it as an amendment. I took it as the original motion itself.
All right, we're done with this.
Indeed.
All right, moving on. Ask for a motion regarding land appraisals and requests for council direction.
Let's get a staff report first.
Thank you, Mr.
Let's put it on the table first.
I'll make a motion to talk about land appraisals.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. As you know, the city went out to request for proposals for land appraisal services on December 18th. We had a submission deadline of January 10th. And one of the criteria within the proposal was that we would not accept bids from proposers who had performed land appraisals on behalf of the Alaska Railroad in Whittier in the last 10 years. I think that was, an intent to make sure that we were getting as unbiased of a review as possible, which, frankly, given the professional criteria that our appraisals appraisers are required to follow. That may or may not have been a necessary component, but for the sake of transparency and public confidence in the process, that was one of the criteria. We unfortunately did not receive any bids despite having advertised, and also we did take the added measure of looking up the qualified appraisers on the state's business license website to determine who would be qualified appraisers for this type of review in our region, and then submitted those inquiries out to try to generate more interest in proposals. As a result, we didn't get any bids to do that service. So we would like an opportunity to talk to the council, most likely in executive session, just because I think council members will have questions that pertain really more to negotiations of land values and so on. But we did want, for the sake of the public, to help them understand really what's at issue here. So the issue is really, how do we move forward with getting our own appraisal of these properties, or an appraised value that the council is comfortable with?
And do it quickly.
And I do want to say that in the agenda statement, I do talk about a concern that any delays could potentially impact our ability to bring legislation forward before the Alaska State Legislature in this session. I'm not so sure that that's actually factual. I mean, if I had a chance to rewrite this again, I would probably not say that, because I'm not certain what the impact will be. You will recall that all we're doing at the legislative session really is drafting a bill that would authorize the Alaska Railroad to dispose of property to the city of Whittier for fair market value, either through a sale or some trade transaction. And so based on that simple action, we don't really need to know, for the sake of getting that before the legislature, what the values are. I think that when Nenana went through this process, they wished that they had known that information up front, so they wouldn't be negotiating that after the fact. But I don't want to complicate the two issues and say that without this that being done, we're going to miss the session. I don't think that's true. But without this, a more expeditious process, we certainly won't know what the values are until much later, let's say 4 to 5 months from now. So that's the basis of the conversation we'd like to have with council. I think there are council members who as I mentioned, would probably have questions best left for executive session. I know that Mr. Kopp and Cherie have offered to try to be available tonight if we were to do an executive session, to call in if you have any questions of them. And then we have the city attorney, Holly, is also available to participate in that. So that ends my report, and I'd be happy to try to answer any questions.
So would administration recommend reducing the threshold? I think there was, they needed to not have done business with within a certain time frame with the Alaska Railroad, whatever those thresholds are. Is that something that the administration would recommend, or just not worry about it at this time?
I don't think that would get us any further along. From what I'm told by different folks that do these appraisals, the railroad uses many different appraisers, and any of the appraisers that would be qualified to do this work have done work for the Alaska Railroad in Whittier. So that's what I'm told. So I'm told that even had we not put that in there, and if we had made it like in the last 2 years or something, we still would have excluded the universe of people that are qualified to perform this type of appraisal. So I can't say that with certainty. I can just say that that's what I'm hearing from people that are in that profession.
Okay. So David, did you?
Well, in the packet, page 80 is options that we could take. One is to put it out for bid over again. The second one is to simply engage an appraisal company to review the railroad's appraisals and give us their opinion on them, which would be much faster, probably cheaper, and we could get that done. The third one is to just accept the railroad's appraisals, but I like the idea of consulting on their appraisals. It seems like a happy medium, and we can keep things moving.
Okay, so any further discussion?
Are you looking for that direction right now?
If council's comfortable giving us that direction now without an executive session, that's great.
I would approve that.
So just to be clear, so we would have to get permission from the Alaska Railroad to release the results of their appraisal to a third-party consultant that's qualified to do this type of appraisal. They would do the review. We would ask them to review the methodology used, review the comparables used to determine whether the opinion of value that was derived in the railroad's RFP was reasonable. And to let them know that if they came upon anything that they felt was significant or material to the outcome that justified doing an additional appraisal, a separate appraisal, then we would want to know that as part of the study. So if that's the direction you're giving, then I'll get a hold of the railroad and ask them if they would approve that. The question that Holly may want to weigh in on is, whether once we have that work done, we have essentially then, let me just say it another way. If the reviewer does the review and comes back and says, yes, this review was reasonable and we agree that these opinions of value are legitimate, then just for clarification, what the city would be saying is that we approve those values as the fair market value of those properties. And then I guess what I would like Holly's advice on is if our reviewer says they agree, so we now have a reviewer agreeing and we have the original railroad results, what is the obligation of the city to accept that without saying, well, we still want to do a separate appraisal of this parcel or that parcel? Do we still have the ability to do that? So if you don't mind, if we can ask Holly to address that, because I do think that is a complication that could arise, and it would be nice to have the answer up front.
That's fine.
So I would say the city retains its right to an appraisal, and so if you get a response that says, yes, these all look good, or these all look fine, and the methodology used is appropriate and legitimate, they still might use comparables that the city might hire an appraiser that would use different comparables. So, and you might get two separate appraised values, both of which are legally valid, but are different, and one that is more favorable to the city or one that is more favorable to the railroad. So I do think the city has a lot of flexibility. We do want to make sure we check our MOU as far as timing. We want to be respectful of that, but I know, Chris, you guys are on top of that. So I would say go forward. And if we're really looking for the ones that are problematic, but if we do have some properties that maybe even look like they've been valued lower or higher, respectively, than you anticipated, maybe we can just kind of try to stay in front of those and order a full appraisal on those after the sort of middle ground gets started. So I know it's not the yes or no answer that we all want, but I think here you have room. I think that you can do that if you need to do that, and it's appropriate. There is one other thing. Oh, sorry, Chris, go ahead.
No, please.
Well, actually, when we're done discussing this, but before we take a vote on this, I do want to have what might be a little bit of a difficult discussion with council regarding conflict of interest. This is the first point in the land exchange discussions that it's really become relevant, because we are talking about appraisals of property, which will then move into negotiations and discussions by council that have implications for individual property rights to the extent any council members are leaseholders. So I do want to talk about that. But I think, Chris, I think your comments are going to be more specific to the appraisal process. So maybe if it would be okay, Mayor, if you could just sort of, call me back into the discussion after we get through this piece.
Okay, council. So it looks like is council in agreement with, or do you want to make a motion to direct city administration for, I guess, choice number 2?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to direct city administration to move forward with, on page 80 of the packet, item number 2, option number 2, I should say. Engage appraisal company to help consult with the railroad appraisals.
I'll second.
Hearing no further discussion?
Voting on the motion to direct administration to move forward with page 80, option 2, engage an appraisal company to review the appraisals resulting from the Alaska Railroad's own appraisal of properties. Mr. Dickinson,
Yes.
Mr. Pinkush,
Yes.
Mr. Wagner,
Yes.
Mr. McCalto,
Yes.
Mr. Shen,
Yes.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
That motion passes.
I'd ask for a motion to discuss Ford Department of Transportation lots south of the Whittier staging area.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Discussion?
Yeah, is the DOT considering selling those lots? Have they expressed interest in selling those lots?
I can't quite hear you, Dave.
Has the DOT expressed interest in selling the 4 lots on the south side?
They have not expressed. However, there are other entities that are approaching DOT about interest, and I would recommend that council direct administration to express our interest, and or does administration have a suggestion? But basically, I would like to, let them know we're a little short on land, and we'd like to have it.
Would Scott be a good person to weigh in on this?
Can you hear me now? So as far as I know, the only entity that has expressed interest in that parcel was the Conservation Corps that purchased the land for the U.S. Forest Service and deeded that over. At that time, the state was not willing to sell or talk in any negotiations about that. They wanted to hold it as reserve for their needs or future tunnel development.
That makes sense.
So one of the options that we could, one, express interest, 2, we know that the railroad's interested in extending a rail spur to Huna Totem, and this could be a land exchange between the city of Whittier and DOT, and basically kill 2 birds with 1 stone. I would love to see a conversation in which we trade tank farm land for 4 acres, approximately 4 acres of land that does not have a covenant on top of it. So I'd ask for a motion to direct administration to approach the appropriate DOT entity and requesting if there is a possibility of the city of Whittier getting access or purchasing that land or trading that land. The four DOT lots.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question.
Go ahead, Tom.
Do we know the approximate value, this ballpark of those 4 DOT lots?
I would say, given their location, and I would say they would be somewhere between $200,000 and $300,000 a lot. But I am definitely not an appraisal.
Okay,
I
and,
would-
and refresh my memory, what's the current offer on the table right now for the tank farm?
You know, there's the requirement that we pay money for this land is, I don't believe that's a requirement for DOT. They know that we're tight on land. The requirement for the Alaska Railroad is that they only disperse their land based on appraised value. I don't believe that the same is true for DOT, so we could just ask for it, and they could say no or yes.
Understood. Thank you.
You were asking for a motion to purchase. I would suggest changing that simply to acquire, not necessarily put dollars in it. And then I don't know why it can't simply be direction to administration to check with DOT and find out the status of that land and their intent. And if acquiring it isn't even an option, but
That sounds great.
place to start with. Inquire. Perfect. Yeah. Inquire to see if it's acquirable.
That's awesome.
Well, yeah, I just think the word purchase shouldn't be there. Why bring that into it?
Okay, so does a council member want to make that motion?
Well, I would just suggest that we do it by agreement of council direction to the administration to inquire to DOT the status of that land and their intent, and if there is future potential for the city to acquire it.
Shelby, you want a show of hands or you want a roll call vote?
Roll call vote since Mr. Wagner's on the phone.
Hearing no further,
Then I
okay.
would make that a motion.
Do I have a second?
Could I just clarify the wording that I have? I wrote it down based on what Mr. Blair said. I did not capture everything you said, so could I read what I captured and then you can make adjustments? Okay, direct administration to approach the appropriate DOT entity inquiring about the possibility of the city of Whittier acquiring the 4 DOT lots.
Correct.
Okay.
I'll second.
Hearing no further discussion?
Voting on the,
Hang on a second. My sense is just that our administration has a lot to do right now, that this doesn't seem like it's a high priority. That's just my thought.
Dave, I can't hear you.
I was just said that we got a lot of things on our plate. I'm worried that this is going to knock some things, more important things off the plate right now. I'm not in favor of adding more to the plate.
Ready for the vote?
voting on the motion to direct administration to approach the appropriate DOT entity inquiring about the possibility of the city of Whittier acquiring the 4 DOT lots. Mr. Pinkush.
Yes.
Mr. McAlto.
Yes.
Mr. Shen.
Yes.
Mr. Wagner.
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson,
No.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
The motion passes 5-1.
Next item, relocating the ferry terminal to Emerald Cove or Trinity Point, whatever DOT deems feasible. I'd ask for a motion, put this on the table.
I'll make a motion, put this on the table.
I'll second.
Discussion?
How realistic is that?
Yeah, Mr. Pincush?
Yep, I believe that it's already been investigated by the state. And I think I think it would the simplest thing for us to do, if we would like to see that, is simply make a resolution or create a resolution to state our support for that and just give it to the state. Be the simplest thing to do.
I think that's a great idea. So, council, I guess I'd ask for support to write a resolution for this topic and present to you in the February meeting.
I guess what
Victor?
one question I have is like, how does this align with like our comp plan? And I mean, is this something we want to do? I mean, this is first time I've seen this on the table, and is this something we want to support and throw out there without, I guess, consulting with our economic development plan that we have in the works and our current comprehensive plan?
So in all fairness, I have been pleading with the previous city manager, and I understand why we didn't update the comprehensive plan when we lost that city manager. But ever since I first came back on this council, I've been asking to update that comp plan. Okay? And this is basically, we're getting crowded out here. This transportation master plan is going to happen with us or without us. And this is a really important component. So I'd ask, one of the next like 3 items down, is about comprehensive plan and having a workshop. So clearly, if the outcome of that workshop is not in line, well, we can also address that at that time. But I'm just asking for council to please allow me to bring forward a resolution such that the people that are doing this master plan can see the desire of this community to relieve the congestion points in a very it would be extremely advantageous to this community if it was relocated. So I'm just asking for, we could still vote this resolution down, but I'm just asking to be allowed to bring this resolution forward. For February.
Do you need a motion?
I believe that I just need a show of hands.
I'd like to ask first, when would you like to see your comprehensive plan workshop? Because if it's soon, then it seems like you would do that first. I mean, like Victor said, if we're gonna do it, it'd be more appropriate for us to have revisions to the comprehensive plan, then do that versus the other way around, listening to the community. So Victor's comments are so I would suggest moving this workshop up so we
Okay.
can affect the second part.
Yeah. Very good. So moving on, unless there's further discussion to be had on the ferry terminal relocation, I'd ask for a motion to put the tank farm land.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
So with regard to discussion, is there any discussion? Well, I have, I'd like to, again, reiterate the importance of land for our economy to expand, whether it's for parking lots or for food trucks or any other economic opportunity for our community. We are going to need land. And with the anticipated influx of additional tourists annually, we're going to need land to address this. And how we address it, whether we address it through public-private partnerships or some other means, I think it's really important for this council to put forward that we want to retain this land and use it to the economic benefit of our community to basically without land, we greatly reduce our future options. So do we have any other discussion?
Yeah, I guess I would say on that, I agree. I would love to retain it, and to Councilman Dickinson's statements of using it for funding, and probably not locking it up one way or another is probably prudent right now. My opinion is using that as the funding to get core property would be like Plan E after we've tried every other method to find funding. It could be the very last resort to get a better piece of property. So keeping it fluid may be a smarter option, but it would not be my intent to leverage it unless we absolutely couldn't do it any other way. So
Well, I don't think declaring our interest in keeping the land is basically locks it up. What I'm trying to advocate is by declaring the intent at this time to keep the land, at least that land can be included in the Harbor Uplands economic development, and we can get public input for ideas on how to develop it, whether it's parking lots or public-private partnerships.
I agree with that. Victor's got.
Sure.
You know, I definitely agree with you on how we need land, a robust land base to support our the services that the city provide, and for like an economic base and for the residential opportunities. However, I just want to bring light and just remind to reprioritize like what we have here. Like we have, just in support of Councilmember Dickinson about land within the core area. We're investing and we're applying for millions of dollars of infrastructure improvements from our wastewater system that supports our core already. We have in the works a rebuild of the stormwater and the core road of our core here, all which is adjacent to this land that he is talking about. And so this puts pieces in play to develop this without much additional infrastructure. If that makes sense, the tank farm has none of that, and that would involve building out all the infrastructure, which means building more stuff that we can barely afford or like building out more stuff, while at the same time we can barely manage to sustain what we have right now. And so I'll just, just reprioritize, reshift, like don't lose sight of like what we have in front of us. Sometimes, we're looking for things and it's right under our nose. And I think that's what he's trying to point at here. We have adjacent roads, we have adjacent water and sewer and electrical right there. And it's part of our core area. And also it's, for my understanding, that it's not contaminated as far as we know, at least to the extent that the tank farm is. And it has proximity to our commercial districts, commercial zoning, like along Whittier Street, and then residential zoning right next to the BTI. So it has a lot of versatility to it. And it's, it's essentially would double our core if you're just looking at the map. But I'd like to say, please let's not lose focus on that, and that's something I would like to see as a priority, and not jeopardize that.
My concept of the tank farm would not be that we provide all the utilities, that it basically would be subdivided and sold off, and it would be up to the owners to do that, with the exception maybe of electric, which is up there. But like water, we wouldn't run water up there. They would drill. Then septic, same as just like the cruise ship terminal that's there now. They're kind of on their own, and so I wouldn't see that expense of having to run utilities up there, or the city even being responsible for them.
So, Victor, when I hear you talk about priorities, I think this is a great segue into the comprehensive plan workshop, and to get public input on some of the important priorities that you mentioned, and possibly priorities that I'm not even aware of, as a result of the rapid increase of cost of living in our community. So I guess if we could leave the tank farm behind there, and then as per council's suggestion, the tank farm would be taken up within the comprehensive plan workshop. And based on the input from the community, we could make amendments to the plan with regard to priorities. So I guess I kind of, could we put the comprehensive plan workshop on the table here, ask for a motion?
Mayor?
Yes?
One thing I would just point out to council and encourage you to consider is Whittier needs a land allocation plan, which is a part of the code that we adopted in the lease policy ordinance. And so a lot of what I hear council discussing tonight, a lot of that could be couched in those land allocation plan meeting, which would both meet your obligations under your code and maybe provide a preliminary arena to discuss some of these things. And I'm biased. I'm speaking as your attorney, and I want to see that land allocation plan process go forward. And I understand that it's a little bit awkward the first year because we have the land exchange process, but I guess I would encourage council to direct the administration to consider that land allocation plan, and then maybe roll some of these other areas you're discussing into that, and see if they can come back with a work session that would further that plan and sort of start the conversation on some of these other pieces that might inform that plan.
Mr. Mayor, can I have a comment here?
Go ahead.
So this tank farm seems to be a point of contention every single meeting. I personally believe that most of the rhetoric here is pie in the sky talk. We've had this land for a long time. As far as local investors, nobody's come forward with any proposal that I've seen. I think eventually if we hang on to that land, and I'm not disagreeing with doing that, we are going to get stuck with an outside investor. The problem with it's the size and the cost of that land. The only way to make it work on a smaller local level would be to divide it up. And then I agree with you, we would need a comprehensive plan on how that would happen. And obviously you cannot have just one person that puts a junkyard up there and basically dissuades anyone else from developing up there. I mean, this is a problem. But anyway, I want to get off the whole tank farm thing. We keep talking about we need land, we need housing, we need this, we need that. Why don't we buy back the P12 building? It's going up for auction.
Tom, would you repeat that last bit?
The P12 building, it's going up for auction. Why don't we buy it back and tear it down?
We're getting a little bit off the agenda here. I'm not saying that your suggestion is not a good idea, Tom, but I'd like for you to please consider bringing that up during council discussion.
Yeah, I can do that. But again, it seemed that this discussion started going toward acquiring usable land. That is usable land. I'm just throwing that in there. As far as
Right now, what we're talking about is a comprehensive plan, and I'm not understanding how this fits in terms of Holly's request of land acquisition or land allocation. For in my mind, without input from the community, why would we be doing land allocation based on some comprehensive plan that's obsolete? I mean, we've added 70 more, more than 70 acres. The Huna Totem land was originally railroad land. It's now lease land for us, and it's got a $20 million investment on it. And then we have this 56 acres at the head of the bay, and it's never, ever been put into a comprehensive plan. And so to go into land allocation prior to hearing what the community wants, I'm not understanding that, Holly.
No, that's fair, Mayor, and that's a really astute point. And I just want to, and the title land allocation plan, actually, so this is in 338-330 of the code. So every year, council is supposed to sort of look at the leases, the land that they're leasing and the land that they own and that they can lease, that's available for leasing, and sort of identify what that process will look like for those lands. And it's sort of just this, it's sort of an organization meeting that kind of lays out what council's intent is for those properties. So I thought it might dovetail nicely into that, because what I hear, it's very hard to follow when we're looking at, okay, we're looking at an exchange, maybe an acquisition, we're moving forward with these pieces, but we're going to take a piece that might be part of that larger deal, and we're going to talk separately about what we're going to do with that parcel, right? And then we're going to talk about and then we have Councilmember Wagner just brought up acquiring another property. And that is, that needs to be talked about in real time, because an auction, it sounds like an auction is on its way. So for all of those reasons, I would like to see that land allocation plan process happen. But it's very narrow. It really deals with the city's properties. You're laying out what you have and what the status of those are and what the availability is. But part of that conversation is, okay, we don't know what the priorities of the community are in light of changes since our last comp plan. So it sounds like there's a discussion there. And then you get a plan of, we're going to go through the comp plan on X date. We're going to have an RFP by Y date. We're going to be looking at this or that. You have a strategy that is consistent, so we don't accidentally make decisions about one parcel that impact decisions about a collection of parcels or perhaps another parcel. That's all. I'm just trying to add some organization while knocking off one of the requirements of the code. But another
So
thing to
Holly,
remember,
Jackie and I have been talking about the land committee, and I believe the purpose of the land committee is exactly, once that's formed, is to do that land allocation. So
fantastic.
I've pretty much left that to Jackie because she's got a lot going on, and I hope she gets a lot of rest on her vacation.
So Mayor, if you have the land committee looking at the land allocation, I guess what I would say is, as far as setting a sort of timeline, proposing to council a timeline and considerations of things, you may want to put all of that, with the land committee. So you have, and so administration can kind of have a game plan for how they're engaging council on these issues. Because another thing to remember is, while it may feel outdated, the comp plan is very much in effect, and not only is in effect, but it is one of these laws that the city cannot really do anything with land unless it's compliant with its current comp plan, right? So I just want to clarify that is lawful and effective. And so making changes to that makes sense. I'm not taking any issue with that. I'm just saying, instead of having these land issues continue to come up, maybe we try to funnel them all through a pragmatic way of getting them in front of council so that the pieces of the puzzle go together. But
Chris has asked for
administration in part.
Chris has asked for input.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to remind council, we have been working on the land allocation plan, the administration, over the last year. The first step that we were waiting on was the GIS, the results from the GIS. That was done last summer. Then the next step was to wait for the result of all the surveys to be done on all the properties down in the harbor, so that we could identify specifically square footage for every lot, which is part of your land allocation plan. You need to have all the data. So that process is largely complete. And then the next step was to do the property appraisals. So we would have that information included with the land allocation plan as well. And then finally, we got stumped by this land exchange, land sale issue with the railroad, trying to decide, is it worth proceeding with the land allocation plan, where currently the city owns very little land that is available for lease or that could be made available for lease. And typically the main purpose, the usable purpose of the land allocation plan is if somebody wants to come forward and lease a parcel, we've identified that as available for lease. It's in our plan. Council's decided what they want that parcel to be used for. But given that we may be acquiring parcels in the near future, we can proceed with the land allocation plan. We can wait till we have, some closure on the railroad issue. And that's kind of how we were proceeding, given the workload. So if council wants to move that up on the priority list, that's fine. My recommendation would be that we wait till the outcome of the railroad land issue and add that to the land allocation plan, and then bring that forward to the land committee to start working on, so they have a thorough and clean document. It's been on our list. It's just we have been short-staffed and it hasn't risen to the level of priority. But it's halfway done. I mean, the work is largely done, and now it's just putting it into a single document and bringing it forward.
And Mayor,
So
so in
Victor-
light of that, I would just get an ordinance. Sorry, I think we should get, that's actually all excellent information and kind of feeds into everything that Chris just said, really feeds into the need to be talking about all of the land issues together, because the administration has been beholden to decisions regarding the exchange and the implications that has on land allocation, right? So I think we should get an ordinance before council that just allows that flexibility for that plan to be delayed in light of the exchange. And then any discussions, there's been discussions on a few parcels, a building and a comp plan. And I think getting those organized into a single conversation is going to be important to meeting the legal provisions and obligations and needs of the city, if that makes sense.
Not really.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry. I
Okay,
guess basically what I'm saying is if you do a comp plan, right? If you're doing your comp plan and you're looking at your districts, it's really important to know what you own or want to own. But in order to do, right? Because you may not have some of the property that you are considering the development of. So, but if you do, if you sell those properties, maybe you want the information from a comp plan to inform what you want to exchange or sale or acquire, given your development goals that are reflected in your comp plan. If you want to get a building for housing, well, then that ties into your comp plan. But if you have the building, that certainly would also inform what goes in your comp plan. It's chicken or egg all over the place. So that conversation, so having the discussion of the chicken or the egg without the full context and an understanding of how administration would organize it and what dates are coming is potentially dangerous for council. That's all I am saying.
Madam Clerk,
Could I ask for a recess?
thank you.
How long? 10 minutes?
If it would be okay with council, I'd like to call a recess. Okay, so we're ready to come back. Um, So I'd ask for a motion for CLIA Council Committee. Hearing no motion, moving on. Ask for a motion, Whittier Transportation Master Plan Council Committee. Ask for a motion for Economic Development Plan Council Committee. Ask for a motion for new city attorney.
I move to discuss the potential hiring of a new city attorney.
I'll second.
So our current legal counsel is recommending that we would have a better fit for a possible, either a smaller firm, or they said we might get lucky and have a very talented single attorney. I'm not too optimistic about that. What I would ask for counsel to do tonight is to make is to give direction to administration to put out an RFP for a city attorney for the city of Whittier.
Yeah, I think that Holly has recommended that we try to do that. I guess maybe now would be a good time to ask Holly for her recommendation on how to go forward with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing for council to remember, you're under contract and you can break it at any time. You can not break it, but you can, you can exit it at any time. But we are very honored and happy to be bound to council, but you've had the same attorney for 10 years. And so an RFP actually lets you explore options. And to the extent you can find a balance where you have a smaller firm or a cheaper firm or a firm that has, has the ability to dedicate someone to come there on a regular basis, and you can continue to use us or even large, us. So there's a couple other really great firms. So you can use a group, you can make choices. I just want you to have choices. So my recommendation would be that you go out for RFP and find out what's out there. And it allows your administration to tailor it for the unique needs of Whittier, which have changed a lot in 10 years.
Do we need a motion to go forward with that, or can we just recommend the administration to go for RFP?
Since we've been on the train of motion making, it wouldn't hurt to have a formal motion.
Okay, I'll make that motion to direct administration to send out an RFP for a new city attorney.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion?
Yep. I don't know if it needs to be in the RFP or not, but it kind of depends on who we get. But it would be, I wouldn't want to lock out the ability to continue to work with Birch Horton. In other words, if there's a specialty need that they could be the subcontractor, I don't know what it would call, but I don't want to make it so we lock it out. And then we probably at some point, we don't need to do it now, but we also need to determine which projects we have going on now that retain them for until that's complete.
Right, and I think maybe I should have said explore our options for alternate attorney services or something like that.
Yeah, no, I think the motion's fine. It's just that, but that I just might make sure that we don't write an RFP that makes them exclusive or something like that.
Yeah, I agree.
Would you want to change your motion to read for a new general counsel city attorney?
Yes.
Victor, did you have something to say?
Yeah, I guess I got concerns just because about getting like a smaller firm or a single person firm, because even though our town and community is small, we have diverse needs for legal fees, everything from rewriting code, leases, to tax code, public administration. It's just a very diverse need that we have. And I want to make sure that we are able to get, like, I guess I really appreciate Birch Horton having that ability to meet, have this in their arsenal to like meet our needs. Like they have lawyers for leases, they have lawyers for code, for rewriting code, to general counsel during meetings, stuff. So.
Chris?
I'm done. Thank you.
Chris?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't want to speak for Holly, so Holly, if I misspeak, you can please correct me. But, we have had conversations with the attorneys about how best to do some sort of a migration. And Holly's assured us that, they will be available to continue the ongoing projects that we've been working on. We do have some, extensive projects that are very specific and require a depth of historical knowledge. And so I think, a next step after we decide how to proceed with general counsel might be to revise our agreement with our existing attorney firm to allow them to work on special projects for us that are, kind of beyond the reach of whatever other direction we decide to go. And I think that in that way, they would make themselves available for certain types of work. They would have to define the boundaries of that. But certainly for the projects that we have been working on that are in the works that won't be resolved for a while, things like the land issue with the railroad and so on, I have no doubt they'll continue to serve us in those capacities as long as those projects are ongoing. And then we could discuss whether they would be available for other special project type assignments.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And to speak to Councilmember Shen's comments, I do think casting a wide net this is a great opportunity. First of all, you should be very proud of yourself. You've had the same lawyer for a decade, and that means you haven't politicized your attorney, and that is very rare. And so we are in this unique position where you can put an RFP out there and really see what's there. And you have a lawyer and a legal team that wants to work with it. It's not, we are very tied to Whittier. And this has been a very long relationship and a very good one. And so we are not going anywhere, and we absolutely are willing to work with the city on a contract, but we also just want to make sure you're getting everything you need. And so I don't know. It'll be interesting. I think there are some larger firms that might be worth considering too. It'll be interesting to see what responses you get, but I do expect you to get responses that add options.
Thank you. Hearing no further discussion.
Voting on the motion to direct administration to send out an RFP for a new general counsel city attorney, Mr. Dickinson,
Yes.
Mr. Pincush,
Yes.
Mr. Wagner,
Yes.
Mr. McAlto,
Yes.
Mr. Shen,
Yes.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
The motion passes.
Ask for a motion scheduling council manual work session.
Make a motion.
Second.
So discussion. So I'm a little background on this. I was the original requester of a council manual. My intent was not to write code. my intent was to use the existing Title II code and make it more layman friendly and to include specific language to improve the communication between council and the commissions, the Planning Commission and the Ports and Harbor Commission. Dave Dickinson and I worked on this council manual, and we made good progress. However, I have concerns, and part of this ad hoc council committee included the city attorney, which I was not able to have any communication with. I didn't specifically ask it. I did have a great conversation with Holly, and she came up with lots of good ideas, and I'd respectfully ask for council to defer this council work session back to the committee and specifically include the city attorney and allow me to address the concerns that I have with the additions that were made by the administration.
We made a motion, right? To schedule a workshop?
Okay, so I would make an amendment then, or the amendment would be to defer this work session back to the council manual committee and have them work with legal counsel. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Shelby, you were working with us on this. Up to this point, I mean, we're just creating this new manual, right? And where we've used another city's boilerplate to kind of help us develop this. Are you talking about something different than what we were working on before?
When the last time you and I met with Jackie Wild and as the acting city manager and with the city clerk, there was intention to meet again, and it was terminated by the administration and brought before council. What I'd like is to finish the discussion and to bring in legal counsel. There were a number of additions made by the administration that are specific to first-class cities that I have concerns about with regard to a second-class city. I believe it has the tendency to take power from the council. And I would like to have input from legal counsel
Sure.
to ensure that
Couldn't we
the
just?
power of the council is retained
Yeah.
in its entirety,
Yeah. I
as
think-
designed by Title 29.
Yeah, that sounds like something pretty specific, that you could redline the document and send it to legal counsel without us having to have a work session. You could redline the document, send it to council and get comments back that direction, rather than having a meeting or a work session. Do you want to do that? Just redline the articles that you're having a hard time with?
Mayor, I can also just come to the work session. I mean, that would be another option. I mean, you already have a scheduled work session with council on the manual, is that correct?
I don't think we have one right now. No, I was thinking it'd be just
Oh,
more
okay,
efficient,
okay.
right? It'd be more efficient just to go ahead and send you a document that could be reviewed. And
Yes, that would work. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I'll be at the meeting too. The other thing is you can send me your comments, Mayor, and we can work through them when it's just presented to council as a resolution too, so we can make sure that that language is addressed before adoption.
Well, to make it
You're looking for
very
the
clear,
content.
I put a lot of energy in this committee, and I feel like administration overruled me, and I don't like it.
Well, one thing I would say, so when we did the lease policy committee, there were several provisions where I think that one committee member might say, I don't agree with this approach to this section. And so our last meeting, what we did is we identified those areas, and then we brought, and Councilmember Penn could correct me if I'm wrong, but then we really brought those to council and said, here is one that we couldn't agree on. This is one opinion. Here's the other. Here's administration's opinion. Here's the legal, comments regarding those opinions. And then council made a decision on those. And I think there were 4 or 5 of those sections where we were sort of at an impasse on those,
So
or
further-
just felt like we needed council to weigh in. Does that your recollection, Councilmember Pinckney?
One of the requests I made was council rules already put forward by a second-class city. I didn't get any council rules from a second-class city. We reviewed 4 council rule manuals from first-class cities. And those first-class cities are specific to a strong mayor, okay? They give advantages to the strong mayor, and this council is not a strong mayor form of government.
Okay, I'm not sure. Do you mean, because I think one of the manuals that was looked at was Seward, right? So Seward has a city manager form of government. And I think Wasilla was looked at, which is a strong mayor. So that one is a strong mayor. So I think it might be, I think that Councilmember Dickinson's approach, I would be happy to go through a red line and look at each of those provisions with you and weigh in if that's the wish of the body. I'd be very happy to do that. I'm also happy to go through and just sort of highlight where it comes in, and then we can talk about it and hash it out with council as a whole as they go through the manual, whatever works for you.
I would like for council to allow me to send a red line version of the manual to Holly and have me work through those concerns. We worked through some of those concerns today. I just would like to continue to participate as a committee member of this workshop or this manual and finish it rather than have administration determine unilaterally that we're done.
I would support that.
Yeah,
Start out,
I
work
guess-
with Ollie and then decide from there what's next.
We have, we have either a workshop or we bring it forward.
I guess I would be in favor of a workshop rather than having one person edit something for all of us. When we decided to have a committee, create and revise, or I'd say, draft this document.
Yeah, but as a member of the committee, he has the right to be able to make suggestions or amendments, that could be brought forth to the council for review. This whole thing is going to get brought forth to the council for review anyway.
Council approved an ad hoc committee that included the administration, city attorney, Dave Dickinson, and myself. I'm just respectfully asking to be permitted to work with legal counsel. It's not going to be hours and hours and hours. I'm pretty sure that Holly and I can get through this in a very short period of time.
Sure.
And as the mayor, I would ask respectfully of council, allow me to have that opportunity.
I would approve.
And the other member is.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Dave. I mean, no, Dave was very helpful in the committee. This is council rules for council, not for administration. So,
You get a nod from me.
Not a problem here.
what did you say, David?
I said you get a nod from me.
Okay. Well,
Or do you want a motion? I don't think you really need it because we've already approved the committee. You're just asking to meet.
Right. Yeah, just
We're
just
already
go ahead and
there.
do it. Yeah, just send it.
thank you, council. Economic Development, Corvus Design, I'd ask for a motion.
Move to discuss economic development Corvus Design.
I'll second.
Okay, it's on the table. So I had a great conversation with Mr. Borg. He's I guess, the manager of this project. He was not, maybe it'd be best if you characterized our discussion. Seemed like there was some opportunity for course correction. And one of the things that I felt that I felt it would be very important. I'm not real clear how these focus groups were formed, and but I wanted to have the opportunity for the local community that is interested in participating in the economy of the Upper Harbor District to be included in one of those focus groups for small businesses just getting started, either food trucks or some way to get started. Right now, it looks like businesses for sale in Whittier are running from 200,000 and up, and we have a tremendously talented, very diverse community that is chomping at the bit. They're young, they're full of energy. I'd love to have them part of this study and to be included. It's just, I believe it's a respectful thing. Would you speak to that?
I guess I'd ask what your question is. So we held 2 public meetings, one in Anchorage that had a great turnout. All right, I'll start from the beginning. We created the stakeholders, and that's where we got our initial information from. We spoke to many of the businesses here in town and outside, basically business contributors, if you will. And Corvus took that information from those initial meetings that we had and kind of drew up the master plan maps that we took to the meetings in Anchorage and here in Whittier. We had a little over 60, 70 folks show up in Whittier, in Anchorage. We had, a handful of charter operators. We had boat owners. We had some business owners. And, we took information there. We had, we wandered around the room. We kind of mined information from the people that were there. And then that information has been cataloged. They brought that information here the next day. We had about 15 folks here from the local community show up. And the information that we mined the day before, plus from stakeholders, was laid out on the table. And one of the things that we really wanted to do was kind of focus this group here in Whittier on how they use the harbor district, and the areas outside of that. So we've cataloged all that information, and we will be working on putting all that together in a draft public comment period. We'll also be taking information from, once Corvus puts up a comment page, we'll be posting that to the website. I expect to see that in the next couple of, another week or so. But like I said, like I explained earlier, we are in the very early stages of this program. We are getting information on, a wide area of use for our harbor and our waterfront and our harbor management area, the district, right? So that's about where we are right now. I am wide open to public input, and we will be giving those opportunities as we develop our plan over the coming months. We should have the draft out. I don't have the schedule in front of me. Sorry about that. But I believe we were shooting for June, if I remember correctly, to have a draft plan to work further on.
So
I'm not cutting anybody out. This is a
Okay.
public process. We've put it out on the internet. We've put it up on our web pages. I can't force people to show up, but we can certainly get as much information out there as we can. Thank you.
You and Corvus Design have put a lot of energy and effort, and you're making good progress. What I am trying to bring forward here in a productive, solutions-based way is that 95% of those focus groups are from businesses of people that are not residents of this community. 99% of the residents of this community would, I know that there's at least 12 community members that want to participate in the economy, and none of them are interested in an economy that is not harbor-based, okay? The tourist trade here, they don't come here for Sears Roebuck. They come here for the harbor. They come here for the beauty of Passage Canal. And so there's opportunities for local community members to be approached. Your method right now is unintentionally, but it preserves the status quo because it's only addressing current business owners. What I'm looking for is opportunity to approach our local community for ways in which they can participate in this. This is going to be a big, roaring, bustling town. And I want to include the conversation of our community members that are local residents. And how you can do that, I'm not sure. But I know that there's, so low-hanging fruit in terms of ways that they can participate. I know that they're talented in a lot of diversity of producing food that just so happens to be the food of interest for the employees of these cruise ships. Like I want to say 70% of the employees on these cruise ships are from the Philippines. It would be great to take advantage of that. I mean, that's pretty much so far all we do is we invite them to the bar. It'd be nice if we invited them to a food truck or to the smaller food cart, and how we could talk about interest in the local community, at least have some type of conversation. If we only engage current business owners, I don't see how that's going to happen, because 95% of the community doesn't own a business here.
So
I'm
the,
completely lost.
so the plan that was approved by this council was for a waterfront economic development plan on the waterfront and in a harbor area and in the waterfront district, like we spoke about today. I invited, and we have public noticed, posters online for anybody in this community that is interested in something that might be happening or might be an opportunity in our waterfront management area or the harbor waterfront. That's what we noticed. And what you're suggesting, I believe, is more of a city of Whittier economic development plan that just is not within the same purview of this study. And if I'm wrong, I apologize, but we were pretty clear on, the plan that we wanted to put forward and the information that we wanted to get. But I am not cutting out anybody in town that doesn't currently have a business from joining in the process of saying, hey, my responsibility as harbor master is the waterfront. I am offering up your input to what we can do for the highest and best use of our properties that we have in the waterfront and the waterfront management area. So Chris wants to.
Mr. Mayor, I would offer a suggestion, and that could be that we ask the project team to, in their discussions, talk about food carts, talk about ideal locations for mobile vendors. My recollection is that when we brought forward the idea of mobile vendors in the past, that council has said, no, they're not interested in that. We would love to do mobile vendors. We have interest from mobile vendors all the time asking, where can I set up a business? How can I set up a business? I don't have the money to build a building. So if the council is changing their ideas about mobile vendors, and especially in light of the cruise activity and the fact that, frankly, last year when we did have so much cruise activity coming, the businesses were overwhelmed and couldn't handle all the people. It seems to me like we aren't going to have a problem with competition. It's not like we're going to run our existing businesses out of business, but this is not a decision for me to make. It's really for the council. We could also reignite the discussion about mobile vendors, and all that involves is identifying, these 5 different locations in town that would be the best locations for mobile vendors. We put out an RFP saying, if you'd like to bid on this site, if you'd like to bid on that site, if you'd like to bid on that site, and then we issue licenses for people that want to be mobile vendors. And they would, be short-term in nature and for a period of whatever time. We would love to do that, if that's what you're getting at. And that could also be rolled into this plan in terms of asking them to identify prospective locations for those that would be ideal. So I think if that's what you're saying, we'd be all over that. But I'm not sure that I'm really getting the gist.
You're getting really, really close.
Okay, perfect.
The only proviso, if it's at all possible, I would like to, this may involve changing of local ordinance to specifically identify opportunities where local vendors have priority. And the reason is we have limited resources. We have limited jobs. We should be given opportunities to participate. I think it's perfectly acceptable. I just don't know how to legally say it, that we'd love to have Anchorage down here. We just don't got room for you.
Well, I think the administration can work with the attorneys to see how we could, if we can specify these particular locations are eligible for bid from just local vendors. And then I don't know if it's possible, but we'll investigate. But I would ask that the council, that there be a motion directing the administration to pursue a mobile vendor plan and then bring forward to council a resolution that identifies particular locations and a strategy around bidding out, for folks to get a permit so that if they want to start a business this summer, they could hit the ground running early and they could do their planning, and we'd be all over that.
And we can include that in the waterfront economic
Yes,
development
mhm.
plan. This is what the council is obligated to, the waterfront, the area that this plan is covering. And that's helpful, but you got to remember when we start doing things like this, we need to make sure that we have services, water, power, sewer, drainage, all those things that may or may not be needed for, so some areas in the waterfront may be more applicable to a certain business than another. Like if you want to do a food truck, you might need power access, but if you're going to sell trinkets on the side of the road, you don't need that. You know what I'm saying? So we just need to identify some of those areas, and that's why we're doing this plan.
Yeah, I don't know what the requirement from the DEC health permits and stuff like that are, but I naively assumed mobile vendors were self-contained. I didn't realize they had required shore power, so I thought they had their own generator or something.
I'm just kind of speaking in our options, generality. I'm not saying they do. I'm just saying some people may require something. And if that's a local, and then we say, well, I'm sorry, you need to have this, and they don't have it, but we can provide it, then we are giving them an opportunity, right?
Mhm.
So this is a big picture item. I don't want to get down to the weeds so much that,
Yeah.
we're saying you have to have 200 gallons of fresh water in your truck.
I'll make a motion to direct the administration to bring forth a comprehensive mobile vendor plan.
I'll second.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, I'll just, I'll vote for this, but just, we were opposed to this in the past and we got a lot of comments from current business owners that were opposed to this. Is one of the reasons we've been not allowing it in the past. So it's fine to bring it forward, but I guess then the business owners can speak to it at the workshops.
Just remember, I'm trying to restrict it to local vendors versus competition from the outside. So I don't think you're going to have a serious effect on the current vendors. Victor? Hearing no further discussion?
Voting on the motion to direct administration to bring forward a comprehensive mobile vendor plan. Mr. Dickinson,
Yes.
Mr. McCulto,
Yes.
Mr. Pinkush,
Yes.
Mr. Wagner,
Yes.
Mr. Shen,
No.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
The motion passes 5-1.
I think we're at the use attorney selected by council to update Title II. Ask for a motion. The next item is I'd ask for a motion to discuss a discussion of why state troopers with 10 unmarked cars and police dogs were sent to Whittier.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that.
Discussion?
Mayor, before council delves into discussion here, I do want to add a few thoughts. So the administration, with council's directive, I believe, asked us to look into this early on, and we have filed a public records request. We're working with some of the nonprofit organizations that have a lot of the questions that council has. And our hope is to get more information so we can provide a detailed report about the incident that has, because we want to make sure that the information that we're sharing is factual, and that council has an opportunity to speak with stakeholders when we have that information. At this state, on this date, we have not received a response to our public records request, but they only have a certain amount of days, just like the city, to respond to that request. So we will keep council updated on that piece.
Can I make a motion to table this discussion until we have more information from our attorneys and from our public safety department?
I have, okay, never mind.
We need to, I'll second that. To table.
Any further discussion?
No, it got tabled.
Voting on the motion to table this discussion until more information is received from the attorneys. Mr. Shen,
Yes.
Mr. Pinkush,
Yes.
Mr. Wagner,
Yes.
Mr. McAlto,
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson,
Yes.
Mr. Mayor.
No.
The motion passes 5-1.
Asking for a motion requesting council to allow the mayor to bring forward a resolution of actions to be taken to protect our residents from malicious lies with appearance of attempting to sow fear and intimidate members of our community.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Should we not also postpone that based on exactly what our attorney says is, let's find out, we're making statements here that we don't know yet.
Yes.
So wait
Is
till we
this
know.
the same, is this the same topic? Does this have to do with that? Okay, yeah, I agree.
You need a
I
motion to
can,
table
I
this
can
as well.
bring forward a resolution that would leave out the unknowns and it would still provide protection to community members. It would leave out any of the information that is currently not known by or will be requested by FOIA.
But if we did know more, we may be able to make a more specific and beneficial motion, I would think.
I was just going to bring forward.
I apologize, Mayor. I think the goal is to get the information and get stakeholders engaged so that the city can make very specific, precise, deliberate decisions regarding actions to protect your community members, not only with regard to the incident, once we really understand what happened and why and what the reasons for that were, or the reasons that were given for that were, right? But also to look at, and one thing the administration, the clerk has been working on is making sure your elections provide maximum accessibility to your community and understanding, and that the city is countering any of those any of the harm, the very real harm that resulted from that day. So they're looking and balancing all of those. So I would caution council to address that now when we are really hoping to bring a much more comprehensive picture and a lot of very specific questions for action to council.
I think you just tipped your hat there, Holly, on the real reason why they were down here.
Well, and we don't know exactly. I mean, we really don't. We have some statements that have been made. We did talk to one of the officers in charge. We've talked to the chief, who is also, doing his due diligence to get this information. The city clerk, the city manager, they were all working to get this information. There's been meetings with an organization, as well as, and the city has worked with the ACLU to make sure that they have access to spaces to talk and make sure the community members have access to that organization. This is not something we've done before, but we really are trying to get as much information as we can, and information about, what next steps are to be taken, if any. I don't want to, I really want to present that to you, or we want to present that to you in a cohesive way.
Yeah, I don't pretend to know anything more than anybody else. I don't. Everything I've heard has been third party. But what I do know is the city did their due diligence and took immediate action and contacted the proper people in order to protect our citizens. They really moved on this quickly, even going as far as hiring an interpreter to make sure that everything was understood during these conversations. And I commend the people that were involved in that.
Yeah, they caught every single last illegal immigrant that they were looking for with that police dog.
Dan, I don't believe they were looking for illegal immigrants, but that is just my opinion. I don't think that's
Why were they looking for Brenda Tolman?
Okay,
Yeah,
and
no,
this
they
is what
were.
I want to try to avoid, council. I just want to avoid, and Mayor, I understand your frustration. I really do, but I want to avoid any allegations or statements by the city council until city council can speak with a coordinated voice from the diocese, because it may impact what steps are available to council and what steps the council takes next. And so it really, the first step is to gather information and to really examine that as a whole, including council.
Well,
So-
again, I just want to say thank you for putting in the FISA request. Thank you for contacting the ACLU. Thank you for hiring an interpreter, and thank you for setting up the sit down. I think the city was completely blindsided by this. It is an absolute travesty that this happened. But yeah, I think we need to wait on more information.
And I will say that was all the administration, except for the records request, and we participated, but your administration really did mobilize very quickly.
Yeah,
So-
I do understand that. I meant to give them credit too.
Victor?
I guess something, we still need more information, but moving forward, maybe perhaps something to offer affected, the affected community members is just a status report, like what has been done, what's in process, where are we in this, like with that, and so that people know that things are being done. It doesn't happen overnight. As Holly says, FOIA requests take however long for them to reply and stuff. But I think people, I think it would be reasonable to ask, like, to have a status report. Maybe that could that, I guess, satisfy, I guess your intention, satisfy for now your intention with this new business you had put on the agenda.
Would you please state the motion? So are we done? Ask for a motion, administration holding official City of Whittier events outside the city limits of Whittier.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Mr. Mayor, if I can address this, I'm assuming that part of this has to do with the Whittier Economic Development Plan meetings that were held in Anchorage. The administration was working really hard to incorporate as many stakeholders that are involved in Whittier economics environment, whether it's business owners that live in Anchorage, whether it's the boaters that come down to the harbor. And, I'm reminded of the multiple times that we have brought forward harbor tariff related issues and been asked, have you run this through the Port and Harbor Commission? Have you contacted the Anchorage Boat Owners Association? So it seems that, there is a clear disconnect because our goal is always to be as broad and inclusive in the public participation process as possible and get as much information from as many people to get the best plan in the end. So this was the public participation process has a very balanced approach to getting input from people that are in Whittier, people that are in Anchorage, people that are in the surrounding area. A lot of Whittier people were in Anchorage and participated in the meetings in Anchorage, so that was really neat to see too. But nobody was trying to outweigh the scales and have more participation from outsiders. It was an honest effort to engage as broad a group of people that use Whittier to tell us what we're doing wrong, what we could do better. When they come and they want to put their boat in the water, what challenges do they encounter? And so hearing all the voices, I think, is a healthy thing. So I'm sorry if anybody was offended by the fact that we held listening sessions outside of Whittier, but I think it's really hard to not admit that 90% plus of the users of the harbor don't live in Whittier. So if we hold all our meetings in Whittier, we are excluding 90% of the people that use the facilities that probably know as much, if not more, than our local people of the challenges of working and visiting Whittier. So I think our goal is to make Whittier as inviting as possible for all the businesses and all the visitors, so we accommodate those concerns. So I'm not sure if that is even the issue that you're talking about.
That was not in any way.
Okay.
I did attend the open house in Anchorage. I had time to attend an open house in Whittier on Wednesday, but they chose to have it in Anchorage. It was well attended. The facilitator, Corvus Design, they're very professional. Where my frustration is that council approved a year-round sales tax. This Corvus Design, I believe, was paid for out of
Mayor, excuse me a second. I've got to catch an early flight, so I'm going to get this tunnel right now. So
Yep.
I'm going to take
All right.
off. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for being here, David. Anyway, am I correct in saying that the Corvus Design project was out of the general fund?
No, Mr. Mayor, I don't believe so. I think that was out of our economic development budget that was in the CPV fund. I'd have to go back and double check, but I'm almost positive about that.
Cruise ship vessel tax money went to this?
I can't recall the specifics of the discussion, but when council was formulating the budget, and now we're going back at least 2 years ago, so I'm a little hazy. The idea was talking about economic development, largely to address the impacts of the new cruise ship dock, the congestion being caused by the new cruise ship dock, the economic development opportunities arising from the new cruise ship dock. And so a lot of it had to do with us addressing those impacts to economic development and the obstacles to economic development that were going to be created by congestion and those kind of things. So I think it was under that logic that the project was budgeted that way. I can't be 100% certain, but I'm fairly certain.
Okay, well, I thought it came out of the general fund. I know there's a lot of local community members that don't appreciate the convenience of year-round sales tax. And then we go and have an open house in Anchorage. They enjoy the opportunity to not pay sales tax year-round. I think that sales tax is very important 6 months out of the year. Anyway, if it's cruise ship vessel taxes, that's another confusing thing. I thought that was supposed to be used to benefit cruise ship vessel passengers.
Mr. Mayor, that budget was passed over 2 years ago before the council had a deep dive on closing the gap and how those funds were spent. So we have worked really hard since then to identify exactly how we are and are not going to use those funds going forward. And I think we've made a lot of improvement.
Yeah,
But-
Chris, I didn't mean
No,
in any
I'm
way
just,
to be
I'm just saying,
derogatory.
I think that was the logic that we were utilizing at the time, was we didn't want our local residents to have to pay to address the impacts of this huge influx that was coming. And so we were trying to get out ahead of that by developing a plan before the second cruise ship dock opened. And that was the logic. So anyway, that's my recollection.
Okay. It's been a long night. Thanks, council, for indulging me on my laundry list. I think we did get some productive things. This is council. We've on item 10, informational items and reports. Victor, did you, or actually the first one is item A. Chris, did you want to mention anything about the financial reports?
I don't think so. I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any, but I don't have anything in particular.
Thank you. Victor, Parks and Rec.
You know, it's been a tough winter with the weather, but we're just working on finding ways to get people to outside doing things, being active. You know, that's our goal. We have, and then starting our plans for the summer. And the rest is in the agenda, the minutes in the agenda. Thank you.
I don't see members of the Ports and Harbor Committee or the Planning and Zoning Commission. So the minutes are included. Moving on to council comments. Dave?
Yeah, I got 4 things. Two of them are basically for council to think about. When council did not eliminate annual transient, the harbor master asked for ideas. And I've been working on ideas, and every time I come up with something I think is good, I run into roadblocks that, you know, this affects that and that affects this. One of the things that I think could be beneficial to keeping boaters longer here, and I'll give you a specific example, is right now we require property tax if a boat stays in Whittier basically 91 days. There are 30-foot boats out there right now that are trailered boats. And if they were to pay for 6 months rather than 3 months of monthly transient, that second 3 months, their taxes is more than that 3 months of moorage. So I think we're stopping people from coming in by doing that. So what I would came up with, and it seems logical in other ways too, is to consider not charging property tax until you get to beyond 181 days. And you might get people to stay for a longer season, number one. And putting yourself on the side of the boat owner, you know, it's kind of a common sense thing. You know, if you got a boat 12 months and 9 months it's at home and 3 it's in Whittier, and if it's 3 in Whittier, you're supposed to pay tax on it. Makes more sense to me, more that if your boat is somewhere more than 50% of the time, that you would pay tax on it there. So at 181 days, it would make sense to me that you would pay tax on it. And then the other thing that you know, I mentioned to Chris briefly, but concerned about trying to enforce that. But it would be quite simple you can go online and sign up for property tax, and somehow there would be coordination between the harbor and administration, and that they, in order to get long-term mortgage, you would have to prove that you had it. You know, in order to get it would be a discount. In order to get a discount, you got to prove you got the property tax paid already. So that's kind of where I'm at. So I'm asking for council to think about the concept of making it more than 180 days for property tax versus the current 90. And the second is, if council is right now, because annual transient is no longer available, a boat that wanted to stay year round is going to have to pay 103% more than a current preferential mortgage or annual transient. And the question is, do we want to, if encourage boats to stay longer, give them discounts? And I have something worked out. I don't know if you guys know WD-40 is water disbursement 40th formula. I'm like on number 9 formula for trying to figure out a way to manage an annual transient and to increase revenue by encouraging boats to stay longer. And the biggest, the two things is that it's 103%. The two biggest deterrents are it's 103% higher and the property tax, at least if I'm trying to put myself in that position. So I'm going to bring something in forward potentially, or bring it to the harbor master first, that would help with those two things. So it's just this is where I'm at. And as far as the legal counsel asks us to codify annual transient, if we're going to grandfather it, I talked to Holly about that. It can be done with a non-code ordinance potentially. It's part of the plan too. So those are two things. The third one is, actually, I'm kind of jumping ahead of, Karen made a comment about sales tax for BTI. So I'd just like to comment to Karen that I've been trying to wrap my head about exactly what you're talking about. I've been trying to wrap my head around it. And I've been asking people questions that, does this fit or does this not fit? And it's basically the same thing. You pay for parking, you have to pay tax on it. One of the issues is people pay for parking that aren't owners of the building. So how do you decide whether, maybe you can incorporate parking into the condo dues and not pay for parking for people that are residents is potentially one way to do it, because then it's included in a different manner. But the basic premise that I can wrap my head around is that the entity is tax exempt. The people are not. And that applies, that's how it works. That's kind of how the tax system is set up. I'm not saying it's right. I'm saying that is how basically it's done. And there's a good question, that's come up with in the marina. They were been tax exempt on parking, but if a guy from China comes and rents a car and comes down here and pays for parking, gets on Klondike, goes out for a ride on the Klondike and comes back, why should that person be tax exempt? So it's, it's a difficult, I have a hard time with it in some respects, but anyway, that's for you to know that that's kind of how I understand it to be addressed, is the entity is not tax exempt. And on that subject real quickly too is, and I don't trust the IRS is completely up to date, but there is a website you can go to on the IRS to see who is tax exempt, who's got 501c3s and all that. And BTI is not on that list. Doesn't mean you aren't, but I'm saying that they don't have it on their website. So just be aware. And the last thing I will say is, and Mayor Dickinson's gone, but on citizen comments, it's limited to 2 minutes per person. And Mayor Dickinson and Mayor Blair are both very generous in that, as long as people are staying on track, and I appreciate that. I would suggest to the mayor that when you start adding things to the agenda, and it's a perfect night to do it, but maybe that you come up with a limit on your 2 instead of 14, maybe 6. Just a thought. You put 14 items on the agenda in one night. I'm suggesting maybe that you space it out.
Any other comments?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, this is Tom. I kind of want to add on to Dave's comment. First of all, Ms. Dempster does not represent the BTI. She does not speak for the BTI, nor does she speak for the attorney. Second, Dave is absolutely right. A lot of our revenue from parking passes, dog permits, blah, 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 is from renters. And I can tell you as a previous employee there that I tried to put a stop to that and initiate a program where all those monies were paid through by the homeowner. The renter had to pay the homeowner paid us. Got quite a bit of resistance on that. And it also has to do with our tax filings. It is the way to do it. And yes, it is taxable. Anyway, I'm just going to leave it at that. And also, I know from a meeting last night that part of this has to do with paying sales tax on things like parking permits. And part of it also had to do with paying taxes on services, more specifically to a contractor that was hired. And I want to be very clear about this. They are two separate issues. So whatever is gleaned from tonight, don't apply them equally to both sides. It's not how it works.
Any other comments? Chris?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, thank you. So when the city of Whittier receives a sales tax form from any business, there is a spot on that form for the business to declare their sales. And then there's a spot on the form for them to declare their tax exempt sales. And then there is a net taxable sales on which the 5% sales tax is applied. We get no transparency around the gross sales. So we don't know what their bookkeeper is including as taxable, not taxable. But on the non-taxable line, they are required to tell us what is not taxable of their sales so that we can make a determination of whether those are valid or not. So whether it's the BTI or any other business, we are not making any judgments about whether they're taxing pet fees or they're taxing parking. We don't know if they are unless they're audited. We don't know if they are unless they've called us and said, hey, are our pet fees taxable or is our parking taxable? So I would encourage anybody that has questions about those to reach out and have the bookkeeper reach out, and we'll happily answer those questions with the folks that are filing the form. But I think there's a lot of conclusions being drawn here that would be cleared up if we had the bookkeeper calling, asking questions, and then we could resolve those directly with the bookkeeper. So anyway, that would be my advice. Thanks.
Do we have any citizens discussion? So just FYI, it was a shotgun. Out of those 14, only about 9 were actually hurt.
9 or what?
Were actually,
Oh, yours?
no, heard.
Oh,
Karen Dempster.
There's no
Karen
one?
Dempster is signed in.
Karen.
But we're not interested.
Ms. Dempster, could you turn on your microphone, please?
Okay,
Thank you.
I want to speak to number 16. I was in the hallway when this mob of troopers came in with folders, and they were grouping in groups of twos. I'm going to go see so-and-so, and I'm going to go see so-and-so. Let's group together in twos. All the names were Samoan names. So I immediately called later and asked what was going on. But anyway, Alaska State Trooper intimidation, when they came to visit the American Samoa residents of Whittier, this needs investigation by the city council because someone had to summon them. They didn't just wake up in the morning and say, hey, let's go out to Whittier and hassle the American Samoan population. They can only operate when summoned. So who did that? And I think if you can figure that out ahead of time and take care of the problem, maybe some of the ramifications won't be so bad. The other thing is Alaska State Troopers don't enforce immigration. They have nothing to do with it. And American Samoans are not immigrants. They're American nationals. Okay? They carry American passports. They go to school and learn American history, probably better than our kids do. And they're the people here, that's why I wanted my two friends to come up. If the issue was voting, why wouldn't a 68-cent stamp on an envelope be a lot cheaper than 13 troopers coming over 100 miles from Wasilla in pairs of two to intimidate? And it's a fishing trip. Why is it a fishing trip? Because of the 13 people, 6 are already American citizens, and they got visited just like everybody else. So that means this was just a power play that should have never happened. And it's an abuse of police powers, and it's abuse of power by whoever called from this area. And I have my two Americans. Well, come on, Millie. These folks got it firsthand, and I called them to ask them what was going on. And they're both taxpayers. They're strong contributing members of this community. I mean, why are we picking on these people? Why are we trying to intimidate them? Millie is a store owner and a Christian minister, and Pekka is a tunnel employee and a U.S. citizen. I asked them to come up because they didn't know they had to sign in to speak, and we'll keep it all together under the 2 minutes. So you wanted to know firsthand what it was like, Pekka?
Hey everyone. I have a lot to say, but due to our time limit, I'll just make it quick. For discussion 16, on behalf of our family who has been affected by this situation, as a witness of this situation, state troopers were investigating our immigration status, which during this time period, few of us were already U.S. citizens, and some are in process of finalizing their citizenship to be able to vote legally in the U.S. And these are facts because I was one of them who spoke with one of the troopers. And if you ask how we feel about this, if you ever care, we feel frightened and shocked. And we believe that this was not just short notice. Looks like it was well planned, and we feel like we were targeted. And although that they left empty-handed, yay. So the big question pop out to you guys that we, people whom we chose to be or look up as our community leaders, what do you do or can do to help with this situation or solve this situation? Thank you.
Thank you, Becca.
Yeah, I wanted to point out in those folders where they were coming up in twos, they had all kinds of personal information. They had a photograph on every single person that they were going to see. And some of that information could only come from here. It would not be available in any other public records. So we got a problem, folks, and it needs to get fixed. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. I do have a very quick question to our Madam Clerk. In that citizens discussions, do you have to sign in to be? I thought local members of the. Yeah. Okay. All right.
Citizen
Are there
discussion
any
is
other
for-
members that wish to speak?
Okay.
Does administration have any response to citizen comments? I'd ask for council to make a motion to go into executive session.
We don't need to do it.
We don't?
No, we resolved it.
Okay. All right.
You heard tonight that, council, we are working on it, but this is one of the times when you have to have patience. Until we get the answers from the FOIA request, we really don't know what we don't know, and we may end up not getting anything. And you're right about, I'm just throwing this out there because it happened to me recently, but so just so you know that everything is available. So I know somebody that sent a text a month ago, 2 months ago, to another person, his personal phone. It was a text. And in that text, he used the word misinformation. I called him a couple days later and my phone lit up and started blinking. It said, "You are being recorded." I hung up and we talked. He said, "Yep, ever since I put the word misinformation on a text, I am being monitored." So just be aware. That's the federal government. Yep. I couldn't believe it. And he said, "Yep, every time somebody calls me, something bleeps in and it's in green letters, big letter, green background." Yeah, holy cow. That was in Whittier. That text was sent from Whittier to someplace else, and that's what happened to that person.
Okay.
Can I say something?
Go ahead, Victor.
I guess. So I made a comment, or I made the motion to table the discussion. Is not because I don't care. It's because I don't want to make a knee-jerk reaction to it, because it's not something to be taken lightly, and that our response to this needs to be as intentional and calculated as what you experienced. We need to have good information, as they did, before we can, investigate and take action. We do take this very seriously. I saw those guys there on the first floor of the BTI as well, and I didn't realize what they were doing until after the fact. And that is, it's disturbing to see that happen. I'm sorry it happened to you.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just say, I was not here in town when that event happened, and I'm really grateful to Jackie Wild, the city manager, who I know was devastated on behalf of your community and did everything possible on the city's behalf to try to respond, to bring resources and help. If you feel like the response is inadequate and there's more that we could be doing, please don't hesitate to come communicate that to us so we know what your needs are. Because the city is part of the family of the community, and a lot of your family members are part of our family, and it really matters. Everybody here, I think you can feel, hopefully the council takes this very seriously, but so does the city administration, and we would love your feedback if there's something more that we should be doing that isn't being done. So thank you for having the courage to come tonight and speak. Appreciate that.
Correction, the word was disinformation. That's the word he used. But anyway, and that person was in Whittier, as a resident of Whittier, and just so you know.
Okay.
It was unbelievable.
So, all in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned at 10:28 p.m.